Okay, buckle up. Let's go back to World War II. Different groups went different directions. So hot rods came out of that. Also, motorcycles. 1962, the Schwinn Company and Alfred came out, looked at all these bikes, went back to wherever the Schwinn Company was, and designed the Stingray. December 31st, 1967. What happened? A guy in Las Vegas, he had a shot of wild turkey. I think it was $100 bet on a blackjack table at Caesar's Palace, and went outside, jumped a motorcycle over the fountains at Caesar's Palace, and Evel Knievel got into the brain of every kid in America, most of whom are riding Schwinn Stingrays. And all of a sudden, this thing that is shaping up got a little bit bigger. Add these things up. See, we're looking back at the path. A lot of times when you're going somewhere, you're not real sure exactly where you're going. But when you get there and look back at the path, you see that you're going, oh, I get it. Oh, that happened. And then this happened and that happened. So now we are right up to it. July 10th, 1969, BMX racing was born.
BMX Breakthrough is bridging the gap from old school to new school, from tracks to manufacturers, from new riders to their local tracks, and it doesn't stop at racing, but the mission is to connect people with bikes. Join me, Jay Oaks, as I interview key people in the sport and in the industry that are involved in their local circles, in their communities, at their local tracks, and aiming to make a difference on a local level. You'll hear stories, marketing tips, failures, successes, and a way to make a difference in your local BMX community. Let's dive in as we kick off this next episode.
I want to say something to your viewers. Okay? Viewers,
Okay.
pay attention. I watched this guy race 2 weeks ago in Tulsa, major track, pretty big event. I have no idea what class you raced, but he won every race I saw him in. And I think you raced 3 times. And I was impressed, buddy.
Well, thank
So
you.
good on you. And his kids race too. So if you're speaking BMX, this is a BMX dude here, this Jay guy.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. We have a good time. The kids definitely enjoyed it, and they're constantly. We actually just went racing the last a couple weeks ago or a couple days ago, and the kids had such a good time. So many smiles out on their faces, and that's what it's all about. And then you brought your crew.
We were racing. Yeah, did. And they raced. Ami and Ollie, right? The Terminator and Pickles raced, yes. If I remember correctly, Ollie wanted to race. They got him all signed up and got a bike for him. And then Ami, Rihanna's daughter, wanted to race. And then, if I remember correctly, I think Rihanna told me this. Ami was having second thoughts, and your daughter, is that correct? Came over, got her, took her out on the track, and that was cool. That was very cool.
So
Rihanna
I like
and
hearing
I
that.
were just talking about this BMX thing, and BMX. This is such a big life thing. These kids go out there, choose to, and then they go out there on their own on the track, and then they win or lose. It's life. I believe, after thinking about this for an awful long time, like half a century or more, that BMX is a great teacher where kids learn for themselves on their own. Their parents don't get to go out there and hold their hand while they're racing. The parents don't get to make up the kid's mind about, are they going to win? Are they not? How do they handle defeat? BMX, man. And I know that's what you're doing because we had that conversation, I don't know, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and that was your intention. That's what you're doing. And I think you're doing brilliantly. I have a note though. Last night, the Terminator, who has been working on beating the Axeman for months, ever since he started racing, he was at the finish line. He was 1 inch behind the Axeman.
Wow.
Terminator is Rihanna's 8-year-old son.
That's so cool. Yeah,
I should tell you one more thing because
Okay.
this goes along with what you are doing. Ami, Rihanna's daughter, who she races, she chose to race. She's out there. She gets on the line. She races. She's usually middle of the pack, like that. Rihanna just about 10 minutes ago was telling me, Rihanna's got tears in her eyes. She said last night, she said in Tulsa, Ami got a poster of the ladies Olympic, like Elise Willoughby and the other ladies in the race, and it's on her wall in her bedroom. And the way Rihanna told it to me was last night, Ami came to her and said, what did she say, Rihanna?
Oh, she pointed to Elise Willoughby and said, I want to be her when I grow up.
Okay, did you hear that? Can you hear Rihanna?
Not clearly enough.
Rihanna said that Ami pointed to Elise Willoughby on this poster and said, I want to be like her when I grow up in the Olympics. And Ami also said, I want to go faster. I want to start winning. This is a 9-year-old girl. In my opinion, she is making decisions that will, no, this isn't my opinion. This is gospel, absolute, total, complete, rock solid, concrete truth. Ami and Ollie and all these BMX people are learning lessons that will be with them their entire life.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think the lessons that are learned in those formative years.
Yes.
I think this sport teaches lessons and skills and builds character traits that you don't get many other places.
Name one. Name another place. I'm gonna throw at you. I'm not sure there are hardly any other places.
So, I mean, I feel like the closest similarity, because BMX comes from motocross, would be motocross. I feel like you probably have a lot of similar discipline and character building there, but I didn't race motocross growing up, so I don't know.
I did, and I haven't been to a motorcycle motocross reunion ever. And yet 50 years, 60 years after the fact, I was in Tulsa at a big bicycle motocross reunion. So anyway, there must be somewhere else that teaches there probably is. I'm biased.
Yeah, I get it. I think I am too. But I also want to say that to your comment about Ami is I noticed that I was trying to talk to Ami and I was trying to see if she was planning to race. And I could tell that she was hesitant and on the fence. And you had commented on my daughter, Ashlyn, going over and pulling her out onto the track. And and I knew that connection, because we've done it a number of times. And And I believe that one of my family's reasons for being at the track is to help other riders be at the track. And so if I see someone that's hesitant, I will go over to my kids and I will say, "Hey, will you go and invite them to go ride with you?" And it wouldn't have worked the same for me to go over. Ami doesn't know
Right.
me. She doesn't know my daughter either, but my daughter's a similar
But
age.
you're an adult.
Yeah. And so to
Right.
go over and have another
So
kid pull her
now
out.
the lessons, who is learning the lessons here? Ami for sure, but so is your daughter. She's learning life lessons too. I love this sport.
Isn't that cool?
Yes.
It's so neat the way that those things the way that they cross over so quickly, so easily.
Mhm.
And my kids are learning things. And one of the things that I talk about through BMX is you just learn to talk to people, and you
Mhm.
have to learn how to go up to adults that you don't know and to ask questions.
Mhm.
Is this where I'm supposed to be at for staging? What gate am I in?
Mhm.
Do I need to be up here yet? Like, you learn independence in a way that other sports don't necessarily teach either.
Yep.
Um,
Yes.
um, so speaking to that, okay, so you and we decided to have another conversation, and I want to know about some of the ways that BMX Action started, but you added to that is that you would love to have a conversation about the origins of BMX,
Yes.
because we're talking about some of the amazing things, some of the stories that we're experiencing now in 2024 as a result of BMX, but it started years ago.
Years and years ago, buddy. Yes.
Before my time. Before my time it started.
Let me throw one more thing at you.
Okay.
Uh, because we discussed this last time. We discussed Dom's Birth of the Freestyle Movement book release. By the way, that book is like at 550 pages. Dom sent me a message on my phone. He said there are people coming from, I just read it real quick, Sweden, England. He mentioned somewhere. Kevin, I've mentioned Kevin to you from Seattle. He also sent me a message. He is really excited. This can be a big deal.
Wow.
So I expect to see Jay Oaks out there, buddy.
I'm planning to be there. I had my ticket booked for the last time we had
I
a date
know.
set, and then
Good, huh?
Dom and I were talking, and he just wasn't. There were too many moving pieces, but this is exciting. So I'll text him as soon as we're done talking.
Here's what happened. Vans, who was going to support Dom in this thing, decided to put, I don't think I told you this ever. So I don't think I'm repeating myself in this venue here. They told him, well, we just put 100,000, this Vans tennis shoes. We just put $100,000 into a Harley event, probably Sturgis. And so we're not interested anymore. Something like that. They aced Dom out of doing this at Vans a little bit earlier. That's why we're in Laguna Beach now. So let me go back and examine that. How I was a biker. I was a biker for, I don't know, 15 years, Harleys, choppers, the whole business. I never wore a pair of Vans tennis shoes in that entire 15 years to any Harley. I wore boots. You wear boots. You don't wear tennis shoes to Harley events. And yet Vans is putting, I don't know, there's something there that doesn't make any
Yeah, it doesn't really add up, does it? I don't know what the
way.
reason.
That's corporate thinking or lack thereof. Okay, so I'm
Okay.
ready. Anytime you want to start on this.
Okay. Okay, so let's talk about where BMX started then.
Okay, am I
Yeah,
up?
and when it started.
Okay, buckle up. Let me qualify. I'm going to be reading a little bit from this
Okay.
thing here.
Oh, you came
I'm not
prepared with notes and
plagiarizing
things.
because I wrote it. like 40 years ago. But keep in mind, I lived through all this stuff. This is not some third person research story. Okay, let's go back to World War II. So there's all these guys over in the World War II and they're getting shot at and they're flying in airplanes and there's violence and noise and excitement and they're scared and there's all that. Okay. And then they come home. War's over. 1945, they come home. By about 1950 or so, some of these guys are thinking this is a little dull, civilian life. And so different groups went different directions. So hot rods came out of that. Also motorcycles. Okay. So these guys found out, hey, riding motorcycles kind of exciting. So now nobody had much money back then. So if you have a motorcycle and you want some excitement and you want to go faster, how do you do it without spending much money? You start taking things off. Take everything off. 2 wheels, gas tank, engine, seat, handlebars. 3 wires. Choppers. Okay, so let's see, about 1950, a movie came out too, The Wild One with Marlon Brando and Lee Marvin, which was motorcycle gang, gnarly picture. Okay, so add these things up. I'm going to tell you a whole bunch of little things that happen. Add them up. Do the Van Gogh thing. Great things come from a number of small things brought together. So the movie came out. Now we've got choppers on the road. They are stripped down. They are noisy, straight pipes. They're pretty colorful. And there's ape hangers and there's banana seats and there's girls sitting on the back and all that kind of stuff. So you strip your motorcycle down to bare bones. It doesn't weigh as much. It has the same amount of horsepower. Add that up, do the math, and you go faster. Okay. So late 1950s, some kids in California see all these wild guys. What was the movie called? Wild One. The Marlon Brando movie? Wild One. See all these wild guys riding these choppers, mostly in California. Weather, once again, it's good all year round. And they started building bicycles kind of like that. 20-inch wheels were popular, banana seats were popular, ape hangers were popular. Strip it down, get all the junk off of it. Okay. 1962, the Schwinn Company, which was back east, I don't know where, somewhere back east, sent a guy out to California, Al Fritz, to see what's going on with bicycles. And Al Fritz came out, looked at all these bikes, went back to wherever the Schwinn Company was and designed the Stingray. Big deal. That would be 1962. Okay. By 1968, the Schwinn Stingray represented something like 70% of the sales of bicycles in the United States. Big deal. Go back to Van Gogh. Small things brought together. Okay, well, the small things are getting a little bit bigger, a little bit bigger. The Stingray, you ever rode a Stingray?
No, I've ridden something similar, some retro redesigned Stingray-esque thing, but never an actual Stingray.
Okay. They had really good steering geometry. They had 20-inch wheels. They looked like a motorcycle. The crank hanger was really low, and they had 4.5-inch cranks. Okay, these are all factors that are really important. You're going like this and you're not hardly moving at all. Hey, we got somebody came in the gallery here. That'll probably happen a couple of times. Okay, so now we got the Stingray that handles really good. We've got, okay, you're with me so far?
Yeah.
Okay, another thing that happened in the late 1960s was motorcycle motocross. Came over from Europe. Roger DeCoster, Joel Robert. I think they rode for CZ. Man, these guys were on dirt motocross tracks. American guys, Brad Lackey, Gary Bailey. Okay, all of a sudden the kids had a bunch of motorcycle motocross heroes that were kind of adding to what they're doing. They're starting to look for tracks. What date are we? Late 60s, very late 60s. Here's one. I want to read this one. On December, okay, got the bits and pieces that are starting to add up here. There's a energy being created. We don't know where it's going to go yet, but there's a definite okay. It has a bit of direction to it. December 31st, 1967. What happened? I don't think you'll get it, but I'm going to try you. It's not an IQ test, really.
Ooh,
But
I don't know. I
December
can't.
31st, 1967. A guy in Las Vegas was inside a casino. He had a shot of wild turkey whiskey. He placed I think it was $100 bet on a blackjack table at Caesar's Palace and went outside and did what? Jumped a motorcycle over the fountains at Caesar's Palace, and Evel Knievel got into the brain of every kid in America, most of whom are riding Schwinn Stingrays, and all of a sudden, this thing that is shaping up got a little bit bigger.
Wow. Okay. So that would, I mean, that's an incredibly iconic moment.
Oh, yeah. Add these things up. See, we're looking back at the path. A lot of times when you're going somewhere, you're not real sure exactly where you're going. But when you get there and look back at the path, you see that you're going, oh, I get it. Oh, that happened. And then this happened and that happened. So now we are right up to it. So July 10th, 1969, July 10th, 1969, Santa Monica, somewhere around Santa Monica, a group of kids, I don't know how many, probably 10, 15 kids on Schwinn Stingrays, rode over to Palms Park in, where was that? It was West Los Angeles, right next to Santa Monica. They asked Ron Mackler if he would hold some races. It was a big flat, kind of a running track, big flat dirt running track. And he did. And right July 10th, 1969, BMX racing was born. Absolutely officially. If you listen to people always want to complain about stuff like this. Somewhere, I think it was 1956, somewhere, Norway, Sweden, I think it was, there was a race of bicycles in the dirt. And the naysayers all want to say, well, that's where it really started. Well, I'm here to say baloney, or worse. Baloney. It was one race, it was bicycles, it was in the dirt. There's big tired bikes. It did not happen again. That was what, 1956. Did not happen again until sometime around 1980 when BMX Action magazine was going to Sweden and kids started realizing, hey, this BMX thing looks kind of good. And then BMX racing started in Sweden. I think it was Sweden. Holland. Okay. I want to put that out of the way. July 10th, 1969, Palms Park, Ron Mackler, kids. Bunch of kids on Stingrays, and bam, that's when it started. So now, taking it from there, November of 1970, there's this 15, 16, 17. We never knew how old he was. He would never tell us. 16, 17, 18-year-old kid that raced motorcycles. That's over at a big, huge vacant area in Long Beach. You already know who it is, don't you? And he's watching these kids out there on Schwinn Stingrays doing all the stuff we're talking about here. They're jumping like Evel Knievel. They're racing down dirt paths like Roger DeCoster and Brad Lackey and those guys. Scott Breedhop went over to the kids and he says, "Hey man, put in a quarter. I'll go home and get some of my motorcycle trophies. We'll have a race." They said, "Okay." He said, "Okay." Brought back, I don't know, he probably made $10. Gave away a bunch of trophies. The next week, about 10 times as many kids showed up, and that was bums. Scott turned that into an organization called BUMS, Bicycle Union Motorcycle Society, or something like that. Bicycle United Motocross Society, or BUMS for short. And that's what he told the parents who came out to watch their kids race. But that was not true. The area, all the kids knew this, the area was called Bums because a lot of bums hung out there. Whoa, that's kind of ironic. Let me go aside for a sec. You know where I'm going with this. Scott died. This is so tragic. Scott died about what, 5 years ago, in a cardboard box in a bums area of, I think it was San Diego. Overdosed on whatever he took, meth, I don't know what it was, and died in a cardboard box. Man, that's heavy. But anyway, that was the second track. Bums, Scott Breedhop. Scott was a genius. Scott's brain worked overtime. Scott did so much stuff for BMX early on. Anyway, so where are we? Spring of 1971, the movie On Any Sunday came out. The opening scenes of the movie were a bunch of kids with their shirts off in some vacant lot, and they're on their Schwinn Stingrays, and they're doing this, and they got pie plates on with numbers on it, and they're making noises like two-stroke motorcycles. Back then, motocross was two-stroke motorcycles. I raced back then. We'll get to that in a minute. I love the smell of castor oil because that's what you mix with your gasoline. I love the sound of expansion chambers. It's all four-stroke now, but boy, those days they're in my brain. So anyway, these kids are making expansion chamber noises, go wing, wing, like that. And then some kid jumps up in the air and they all wheelie off into what a lot of people perceived when they saw the intro to the movie as what did we call it? Pedal power race? I don't know what we called it back then. We didn't call it BMX, I don't think. But anyway, whatever. The opening scenes of that movie got into the brains of quite a few people. When I was researching this history, I contacted Bruce Brown, who filmed the movie On a Sunday. He was brilliant. His narration was brilliant. It's a motorcycle movie. The only bicycles in there were that 10, 15 seconds opening thing. I asked Bruce Brown why he did that. And he said, I was most of the way through doing the movie. I thought it would be a kind of a cute, colorful introduction. And so I went down. He lived in San Juan Capistrano. Went down to a vacant lot where a bunch of kids are running around on Stingrays in a vacant lot. And they did the race thing. He filmed it, and it became the intro to the movie. Okay, that intro into that movie got into the heads of a few people, mostly in California, and it rang down through the years. So let me do a few of those. I already told you the rest of the movie was about motorcycles. It was a good movie though. Man, you can watch that movie. It's really cool. I've watched RL and I back then. He was about 10 at the time. Back then in 1971, I think it was 71, early 72. We went to see that movie. I started counting. We got up to 12, 13 times we went to see that movie. And after that, we would drive around. We'd see a vacant lot and we'd go, oh man, that would make such a cool track for these Schwinn Stingray bicycles. So now in 19, am I doing okay here?
Oh, that's great.
Am I keeping this clear?
Yeah, I love that. I think, and so would you say that, so On Any Sunday had a significant influence on the racing scene as a whole?
Oh, big time. Major.
Okay.
Yes. So far we've got what? Scott Breedhoft, this nutcase dude. I love that guy, by the way. I love that guy. He should still be here. He should have been in Tulsa with us. He should still be here. I love that guy. He was a genius. He was just the dumbest. He was a genius and so dumb at the same time. That doesn't mean I don't love him. That doesn't mean he didn't have a huge, huge impact on the early days of BMX. But anyway, yes, absolutely what you said. So now, summer 1972, a real small BMX track opened at Indian Dunes, which was a huge motorcycle park in Southern California, but only lasted a short period of time. But Indian Dunes goes down in history, my history anyway. This is the history. I'm being modest. This is the history of BMX. As the third BMX track. Didn't last long. Okay.
And
But
Indian
huh?
Dunes was Ernie Alexander.
Right.
Yeah.
So now let's examine that a little bit. So Ernie Alexander, I got to know Ernie because I used to race motorcycle motocross back then, and RL raced. He had I got him a Yamaha mini bike when they first came out. So we would go to Indian Dunes, and Ernie would run the motorcycle races. By the way, the starts were rubber band starts. You know what they are? Okay. Yep. Take a piece of syringe tubing and stretch it across. And anybody that jumped the line, that syringe tubing, when you turn loose of it, it just fly and it'll wrap around your front wheel and jerk you sideways. You'll crash. Rubber band starts. So anyway, Ernie and Suzanne, his girlfriend, I think, if I remember correctly, Suzanne was running the mini bike races. Ernie was running the big bike races. Interestingly, at the time, Steve McQueen was racing there also. And I want to tell you, I saw Steve McQueen race. That guy was fast. If we fast, back then it was expert. There were no pros. If we fast forward a little bit, put Steve McQueen in there, he'd be a pro. And he would not be a pro at the back of the pack. That guy was fast. Got that one? His kid, Chad, raced the mini bikes. He was fast too. So RL raced mini bikes was Chad McQueen and other guys. There were some fast dudes out there. And I raced the bigger track. I was a novice. Steve McQueen was an expert. So I just saw him race. But I want to give that guy his due. That guy was out there doing it. He was not kidding around. So now, in December, so we got Ernie and Suzanne at Indian Dunes running motorcycle races. In December of 1972, John and Don Dreyer started a BMX track in their backyard in Malibu, which shortly got a lot of complaints from the neighbors because there's so much noise going on over there. So the Dreyer brothers found a place in Malibu Canyon to do their races. And when the word got out that the new track was right next door to a nudist colony, the number of racers expanded exponentially. And so what was that? That was about the fourth. I think we're up to about the fourth BMX track next to the nudist colony. So now Ernie and Suzanne running the races at Indian Dunes are catching. Ernie is one of the guys that watched On Any Sunday a few times. Got into his head. And so he moves from Indian Dunes and starts a BMX track at Soledad Sands. This would be early 73. Soledad Sands Park in Southern California. And that would be, what are we up to? Number 5?
Yeah.
5.
And I actually just saw a picture yesterday that Brian Dworshak posted of Soledad Sands, and I saw it on the NBA Racers reunion, and you'll probably hardly be able to see it, but
I can see it. Yep.
So anyway, that was really cool because it's funny because out in Acton, nobody knows, very few people, even people from California, very few people know where Acton is. But we've stayed out there so many times at the campground out there. So I know exactly what the soil's like out there, what the ground's like, and I'm very familiar with Acton. So
that was a gnarly, it was downhill. As I recall, it was kind of in a canyon, downhill, gnarly jumps. That was old school BMX racing. Have you seen Wendy's picture of Tom Lund on the monoshock? It's a classic picture from about 1975. Tom Lund on that monoshock, and man, he is way up in the air.
Okay.
Anyway, that's Soledad Sands. That's one of the iconic pictures of BMX. So anyway, at the very same time, Ernie was building Soledad Sands, in Redondo Beach, there was a guy on the city council in Redondo Beach who owned a bike shop. And he was hearing about all this BMX stuff. So he put in the newspaper, he asked if there was anybody out there interested in building a BMX track and maybe running it. And myself and a whole bunch of kids from Arvada Street, probably, I don't know, 6, 7, 8, 9 kids that all hung out together. That includes me. We would get, if I remember correctly, I had an El Camino at the time. We would load up the front and the back end of that car. We'd all get our skateboards and we'd go down to the funnel and ride skateboards. Or we'd go over to Intradero Park and they would ride BMX bikes. I could ride a skateboard. I'm not real good on a BMX bike.
Really?
I've done it, but I'm not real good.
Wow.
But anyway,
I didn't know that.
Gang. So we all went to a city council meeting, says, hey, we'll do it. So we did it. That became Dominguez. And Dominguez opened up at about the same time that Ernie opened up Soledad Sands. Is that right? Soledad Sands? Is that the one we're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay, that would be in 1973. And by the end of 1973, BMX tracks had begun to spring up all over the place. Arizona, Oklahoma, Florida, places other than California. So there is the evolution of evolution. That's probably not the right word. There's the beginning. There's how BMX started. Okay. Next big thing, now there is BMX. And so now there are probably mostly fathers with kids who race BMX who are starting to think, hey, I could do this or that, or okay. So in, let's see. Hang on a minute. Let me catch up with myself.
You're good.
Okay. Schwinn Stingrays had the curved top tube, a swoopy down tube, real low bottom bracket, 4.5-inch cranks, good steering geometry. But to race BMX, let's go to the Rick's Bike Shop team. You heard of them.
Yeah.
The infamous Rick's Bike Shop team. That would be John Palfreyman, Doug Takahashi, Tom Lund, David Clinton, Marvin Church. I'm probably leaving somebody out of there. These were gnarly dudes. Man, they would show up at Dominguez and we're all a little teeny bit intimidated, you know, maybe a lot intimidated, but those guys were okay.
And where was Rick's Bike Shop at?
Oh, Santa Monica or something. There
Okay.
never was a Rick's Bike Shop.
Oh,
There
really?
was Rick Toomey, who called the team the Rick's Bike Shop team. He had a distribution company called TNT Distributing, which we may touch on in a minute or two. TNT Distributing. I'm not sure this history goes to that point, but maybe it does. But anyway,
Okay.
that was Rick's to me. He liked that. He kind of came out of skateboards, so he had that skateboard attitude. He consciously turned these guys into kind of rowdy dudes because that was the skateboard style at the time. Go in with your skateboard team, scare everybody else to death, and beat them at whatever the competition was. So Rick had an attitude, and he passed it on to his team. But anyway, let's talk about the first bicycle that was modified for BMX racing in a way that made it faster. This would be the progenitor of even bikes today. This is their grandfather. Somebody in the Rick's Bike Shop area, I don't mean that geographically, I just mean connections, took a Schwinn Stingray, cut off the head tube, went to the other end, cut off the top tube, cut off the down tube, formed straight tubes, saddled them, and put them together in such a way that here's your head tube, here's your back triangle, and tip the back triangle up, raise the bottom bracket significantly, and now weld them in. And now you have a frame, and now you can put, and what we did back then, we did, was put Schwinn Diamond 6.5-inch cranks on the Schwinn Stingray, and now you had ground clearance. Now picture this in your head. This should be easy. You're gonna have a Schwinn with 6.5-inch cranks. The guy you're going to race is going to have 4.5-inch cranks. He doesn't have a chance. He doesn't have a chance at all. So
That's
now,
a that's
I-
a
huh?
that's a major difference in
Oh,
and
huge.
because we have because we're all measured in millimeters, is there's 25.4 millimeters to an inch. So that's a 50 millimeter difference. So that's the difference of going from a 170 down to a 120 crank. That's that's ridiculous. So it's a 6-inch crank is really what? Like 25, 50, like a 150. A 150 to a 165 is
Mm,
probably, but then you're dropping down to a 100 or 110 millimeter crank. So anyway, that's a major difference.
yeah. Also, there's another factor here. The Schwinn diamond crank didn't bend. It was really well made. I don't know what they made it out of, but it worked.
Okay.
So now the question is, who built that first bike? I think 40 years ago when I wrote this history, I thought that was very important, and I did everything I could to track that down. Here's what I came up with. Ask Rick Toomey, and he'll tell you he built it. Okay. Ask me, and I'll tell you that the first straight tube modified BMX bike that I ever saw was one time when the Rick's Bike Shop team came to the Redondo Beach track, and Marvin Church Jr. got out of the van with this gorgeous red, white, and blue straight tube, looked like Captain America. God, it was beautiful. 6.5-inch crank bike. It was beautifully welded, beautifully made. That's the first one I saw. That one was made by Marvin Church's dad. I talked to Marvin Church about this, talked to his dad about this. His dad was a good guy. He's dead now. Rest in peace, buddy. Marvin Church Sr., he was a good guy. Played the banjo. So that was the first one that I saw, but I was wrong. That was not the first one. The reason Marvin Sr. built that for Marvin Jr. was that the existing straight tube, they were painted yellow, spray can. They were MIG welded, which looked like seagull crap. I mean, ugly. Straight tube frames. Marvin Church Sr. saw those. He thought they were so ugly that he built a really cool bike. TIG welding, painted it red, white, and blue. It was gorgeous. But anyway, I was wrong about that being the first bike back then, because there were these other yellow bikes that Paul Freeman had and a couple other guys on the team had. They were ugly as hell, but they worked, buddy. So now I talked to Danny Garcher, who was on that team. I talked to Marvin Church. I talked to JP. JP, it's real hard to get answers out of. JP's off in JP land. That's John Paul Freeman. Who else? I talked to Lund. I talked to everybody about this. Here's the deal. John Paul Freeman's dad at the time raced motorcycle side hacks. He had a shop. He had welding equipment. He built side hacks. He had the tubing. He had the construction experience. I think it was, let me think, who were these guys? So Rick Toomey would tell you that he built them. Tom Lund said he was pretty sure that that Paul Freeman's dad built them, and I lean towards that theory just because all the evidence points that way. I never did pin it down. Danny Garcher, who was on the team, wasn't sure. Anyway, that's the original BMX.
Okay.
The
So
original BMX modified bike. And I really can't honestly credit anybody with that because I could never track it down definitively. So,
Interesting. Huh. So
let's
so
see.
everybody has a varying story.
Yes,
And huh, that's
I
interesting.
knew all those guys. I didn't know Paul Freeman's dad, but I did know that he had a shop that he built side hacks. They raced, he raced most, and then later Paul Freeman and Lund raced motorcycle side hacks all over the world. Those two tough guys, Paul Freeman and Lund. Okay, 1974. So you're up with me, right? Everybody's
Yeah.
up to date. Remember Van Gogh? Small, bunch of small things leading to a big deal. The big deal being BMX racing and where it went. So 1974, there's a pattern here. Kids are involved in doing all this stuff, jumping, racing, all this stuff out in Soledad Sands, Redondo Beach, wherever they can race. And there's this guy, Lynn Caston, whose kids, he has two kids, who are bending these Ashtabula blade forks like once a week. This is a right person, right place, right time story. Everybody was bending Ashtabula forks once a week. Everybody. So
Oh,
Lynn
oh, so
Caston,
not so not bending as in making the forks and the intentional
bending
bend,
as in jumping,
as in
and the forks
destroying
go
them.
sideways on it because they have no structural integrity. They're
Okay.
cast iron or some god awful. they're they're on they come with the Schwinn Stingray.
Okay.
That's what you get. So Lynn Caston, this would be in 1974. Lynn Caston owned, I think it was Champion flat track, not flat track, Speedway racing bike, Speedway racing bike frame manufacturer. Really top quality, chromoly, nickel plated, the best Speedway racing bikes going. So now we got this father who builds motorcycle frames, high-tech motorcycle frames with two kids who are bending Ashtabula forks weekly. What does he do? He designs the Red Line. Where'd the Red Line name come from? It was probably in Red Line might have been the company that the Champion frames were made under. But anyway, Lynn Caston and one other guy, Mike something or other, owned Red Line or Champion Racing. Lynn built his kids these tubular forks, Red Line forks. Okay, I want to read you a couple facts about this. Okay, I got to tell you something. This would be 1974, early days of BMX racing, and a tubular fork comes on the market. Do you have any idea? Be a father of a kid that races, or be a kid that races. This is major speed equipment. Major. I don't know how to tell you that. This was me. I was a father. I didn't race. My kid raced. I went to the races all the time. Yeah. Took pictures of them. That forecast, that's changed the world. The world changed. Lynn Caston sold so many of those chromoly tubular forks that within 3 years, Lynn's Red Line company had become all BMX. And he manufactured 3 years later, he's manufacturing the Red Line BMX frame. I think the first one was the loop tail.
Yeah.
Loop tail. Yeah, Paul Freeman got one of the first ones of those. Red Line loop tail BMX frame, but that was about 3 years later, 2 years later, maybe. Okay. That was red line tubular forks. That was such a huge thing. That was so, are you seeing the huge things that happened here? I wish I could pin down who really did the first frame because they should get major, major credit. And I couldn't. And I tried every way I could. Okay, 1974, a motorcycle accessory company named Webco got with Chuck Robinson and they created a Webco frame. For reasons that I don't recall, there were a lot of Webco frames out there. Why it wasn't such a big deal as lens forks, I don't know. Don't know. Maybe there weren't enough of them out there. I don't know, but there was a Webco straight tube BMX frame. Chuck Robinson was involved heavily in that. June of 1974, Elaine Holt published the first issue of BMX News, which would soon be nationally distributed. It was a tabloid newspaper. And BMX News, Elaine Holt gets credit for spreading the sport of BMX across the United States. An interesting point here now, because originally you asked me to tell you about the start of Wizard Publications. Well, right here. So now, Elaine Holt has this BMX newspaper. We're going to races. I'm a photographer. I love photography. I'm a fireman at the time, so I'm not a professional photographer, but I'm pretty good. And I got kids that race, and I got this whole group of kids. I used to rent. You couldn't do it today. The liability would be too scary. I used to rent a stake bed truck and drive from Torrance out to Soledad Sands every weekend and haul, I don't know, 20 kids with their bikes, showing Stingrays, their bikes, their lunches. I never got permission from any of their parents. They'd show up, get in the truck. It's an open bed truck. We drive out there, they'd race, we'd drive home. It was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. I grew up with kids.
So just pile the bikes and the kids into the bed of the truck and
right. Open bed. That right there, police would pull you over today.
Wow. Good times.
I told you my Chevy El Camino, we get about 15 kids in that thing, meaning there's about 10 in the back. The sides are about this deep. If you did that today, there'd be the SWAT team would come down on you, arrest you, have you up on the hood. Couldn't do it today. So anyway, all this stuff's going on. I'm a photographer. I'm with the Arvada Street gang of kids, BMX bikes, side hacks, all this stuff, taking pictures, and bam, Elaine Holt comes out with a newspaper. So I met Elaine Holt at one of Ernie's races. There is actually a picture of this. I think Dom Phipps may have it. And there's a picture, I don't know who took the picture, probably Russ Okawa, but there's a picture of me walking up with my hand out to Elaine Holt. First time I ever met her, shaking hands. And I know what I'm going to say. Hey, I'm a photographer. I have a bunch of kids that we ride bikes all the time. You want us to test some bikes for you for BMX News? And she said, yeah. And we did. Wendy, of course, got involved in that pretty quick. At the Dominguez track, I'm bouncing back and forth between BMX News and the Dominguez track. We would run races once a week. I'd be the starter and the organizer. RL would race. So Wendy, because I wanted to keep her out of trouble, I gave her my camera and I said, look, take pictures, do this, line this needle up with this thing here. If you're taking a picture sideways of a guy, kind of lead him, give him a little space in the frame and go take pictures of kids. And she did. She shot it over a period of a couple of weeks. She shot 2, 3, 4 rolls of film. And I had a little dark room in my house. And weeks later, I finally got around to developing her pictures and printing a proof sheet. And son of a gun, there were some brilliant, surprised me, boy. There were some brilliant pictures on there. So now we go to races. Now we're back up to BMX news. And so Wendy and I are photographing all these guys. And it's like 1 week, 1 month, BMX news came out monthly. Wendy and I got into this competition to see who would get the cover. Because one of us always got the cover of that thing. And we'd always do a test inside. And they were really good articles. We had a bunch of kids to test bikes. Elaine would get us a bike. We would run that thing through the ringer. So Wendy and I got into a competition of who would get the cover of BMX News. And as I recall, it was about an even trade-off for quite a while there. Anyway, that's where Wendy and her photography came from.
And how old was Wendy at that time?
Let's see, by then RL must have been about 12. So Wendy might have been 14. Something
Okay.
like that.
Okay.
And by then I had custody of my kids. That was a tough number. Back then, us males didn't get custody of kids. We're brutes. That was how it was back then. You go into court.
Well, there's still a lot. I mean, that's still a difficult thing to get. I mean, it's not
but
as
not
uncommon
as-
now.
Not
But-
as difficult.
Yeah.
But I know there's still this thing about, Rihanna, you don't listen to this. If you're a female, well, you're going to be a great parent. If you're a male, well, you're kind of sketchy, buddy. But anyway, it took quite a while back then, but I did. And the kids wanted to live with me.
Okay.
And eventually I got custody. So by then I had custody of the kids. And BMX, we're back to Van Gogh again, bits and pieces. BMX is getting larger and larger and larger in my life. The photography's still there. I'm a fireman at the time. And so I'm thinking there's another thing that happened in there. Somewhere before we started actually going racing all the time, I could see a generation gap. I could see it happening. I could see it. And I was trying to be a best parent I could. I worked real hard to become their parent. And I was paying, and you know what? I couldn't do a thing about it. It's just going, it's age, it's time. There's probably something in our DNA that says it's time for you to break away from your parents, and something clicks in and the generation gap starts going like this. Then BMX came along and disappeared. Just instantly, just vanished. Another point for BMX. So Wendy, she's like 14-year-old girl. That's scary, raising a 14-year-old girl. So anything I could get her to do photographically, keep her out of trouble. And she did really good at it. So anyway, that was Wendy, BMX, photography.
Quick detour to one of our gold level sponsors, Luminex Neon, who has partnered with us to help accomplish the mission here at BMX Breakthrough. We're so grateful for their opportunity, and there's a special place, a near and dear place in my heart for neon, all things neon, whether that's on paper, whether it's shoes, whether it is a sign in a living room or a garage space, it doesn't matter. I love neon, always have, probably always will, and so neon signs create a unique statement piece. So if you're looking for that for your bike shop, for your garage, for your workspace, maybe it's for your living room, Luminex Neon offers exactly what you need. So with unparalleled craftsmanship and endless design possibilities, Luminex Neon is your go-to for brightening up any space. You can follow the link in the description and use our promo code BMX Breakthrough 10 in order to get 10% off of your order and to explore everything that Luminex Neon has to offer.
We are almost done with the history of BMX. Not quite. The first major BMX race was held the Birmingham High School, Van Nuys, July 20th, 1974. So BMX News is out. Wendy and I are photographing for that. The Arvada Street Gang is testing bikes. Lynn Caston has the forks out. We have a Webco bike and we have straight tube bikes out there. Scott Breedhaupt had something to do with this, but anyway, this was the first of a 3-race series called the Yamaha Gold Cup. So we're at the races, and somebody comes up to me, I forget who it was, one of the promoters, might have been Scott, and he says, "Hey, you want to be the starter?" And I'm going, "Oh, okay, cool." And they gave me a referee shirt and a flag. And so I started the races for the Yamaha Gold Cup. Sports Illustrated, big deal magazine back then, covered that race. And I got a picture in Sports Illustrated jumping up with the flag, starting the race. They did some pictures of the thing. Stuart Thompson won that. Stu won the 16-year-old class. David Clinton won the 14-year-old class, and Bobby Watts won the amateur class.
Wow.
I think was held in the Coliseum. Of the 3 races, I think Yamaha put $100,000 into those 3 races. That was a big deal. That was another one of those big deals along the way.
Wow. Oh, but that, I'm still gonna go with that. $100,000 makes more sense than Vans and Harley, but that's, I digress. But
no, you're not digressing at all. Vans, the people who are running Vans should pay attention. They should pay attention to their roots. They should pay attention to who uses their product, and skaters and BMXers and everybody else related. It's a street thing. It's a young people thing. It's a wild people thing. It's not Hell's Angels, hardcore bikers.
yeah, it's a little wild.
They do not wear Vans. They don't. Pay attention, Vans. That's why I'm so disappointed that Vans didn't take Dom's book release and see what a brilliant, that is a brilliant thing. But they've got blinders on the corporate. Okay, one more thing. September 1974. There's this dude who has races in drag racing. He's familiar with mag wheels, stuff like that. He races in drag racing. His kids race BMX. 2 kids race BMX. Skip Hess. Skip Hess decides to make a mag wheel. It was really aluminum, it wasn't magnesium. Decides to make a mag wheel for BMX bikes. And he does. That's September of 1974. And that was like when the red line tubular forks came out. You cannot imagine the magic that all us kind of dirty, dusty BMX racers or guys that drove the trucks or cars to get them there. You cannot imagine the magic that product had. Everybody had to have mag wheels.
Was it, and I can make my speculations, but did everybody want them because they were the best thing or because they were new and cool and different? Or maybe a little bit of both?
Well, perception. Let's talk about perception first, not necessarily fact. Perception was that it was all of those things. It was the coolest, newest product. They didn't cave in or bend on you. You must go faster. They just look fast. You put a set of those, you go faster just because you think you should, so you do. A few years went by, and Skip took Motomags and turned it into probably the first mass-produced boxed. This is BMX. We're just barely, and he boxed this mongoose frame. Mongoose is a term from drag racing. There was the mongoose and some other. Anyway, mongoose was one of the drag racing vehicles that was really dominant. And that's where Skip got the name for mongoose bicycles. But anyway, he came out and he put it in a box, a frame. Mongoose BMX racing frame. And I think Mongoose probably, at least the early days of BMX, the early decades of BMX, probably sold more BMX racing bikes than probably any other brand. So anyway, that was Skip, right? Like Lynn Caston, like me, right person, right place, right time. Kids are involved. BMX is involved. What you do is involved. Skip took his drag racing experience and turned it into the Motomag, which sold everybody. Everybody had to have a set of Motomags. Later, when BMX Action came out, and I started really analyzing things, weighing them, comparing them, getting racers' opinions, doing my homework, it turned out that the Motomag weighed significantly more than a spoke wheel. And if you get into rotating weight, and if you analyze the process of BMX racing, and you're pedaling and you're having to overcome the inertia of a wheel at rest, and you have to get it rotating, and one of them weighs considerably more than the other, you're going to go faster with the lighter wheel. And I put it in the magazine, and somewhere in there, the Motomags faded away. They were great style. I think you still see them around. You see them a lot at these BMX bicycle shows, that happen.
My dad's running a repop set of them. My dad still races with them to this.
How's your dad?
56.
Of course he races with Motomags.
Yeah, he got some Motomags a year or two ago when they came out, and he's got a Schwinn Superstock from '99, I think, and Motomags, and then he put a Botima fork on it, and
cool.
He's got a bike that weighs about as much as a boat anchor, but he gets lots of conversations that start because of it. But so I have to ask then.
No, we're talking about style here.
Oh,
Style's a big deal.
It is. So, okay.
I understand exactly where your dad's coming from.
So you mentioned that you are, okay. You mentioned that you were analyzing things and you started noticing how heavy the Motomags were and talking about that through BMX Action. So are you partly responsible for the demise of the Motomag then?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Because you started doing the math.
And also, who did I put that magazine out for? What was I doing? Way early on, I knew exactly who I was putting that out for. I knew exactly what I was doing. Number one on my list is the readers and the racers. I know that's two, but it's not really. The readers and the racers. I am not, remember the event a couple years ago in Carson? Brent Patterson, what's the Patterson's dad's name?
Vance.
Vance. Vance Patterson came up to me and he said something really nice because I was getting an award. He has something really nice, but he said, it's funny back in the days of BMX Action because the Pattersons got a lot of covers. So did a number of other people. He said it's amazing how many people came up to me and said, so how much are you paying Osborn for those covers? And he said, I always tell him I didn't pay that guy a dime. He didn't, those covers were not for sale, and they weren't. Our covers, but this is an example of the Moto Mag. Was I going to say, oh, this is a really great wheel, you guys, buy it, race it, do it? No, man, sorry. My two, the people that I am responsible to, that actually I want to throw this in, that I admire so much, those kids out there. Those kids created BMX. They created the bikes that Al Fritz saw that turned into a Stingray. They went to Palms Park and talked Mackler into running races. Those kids, that's where this whole thing came from. That's who I was responsible for. And I pissed a lot of people off. Manufacturers, sanctioning bodies, Ernie Alexander. We've become friends since then, so I can say that. I didn't have a choice. That magazine was going to be straight up and down, and it was going to be our primary responsibility was to the kids and the racers.
That's good.
Let me throw this at you. If you were paying attention, you heard me say this once or twice or three times at the Tulsa thing. Do what you love, do it brilliantly. Everything else will fall into place. I was doing what I loved. I loved photography. I loved BMX racing. I loved those kids. I loved my kids who were involved in that. Do it brilliantly. Everything else will fall into place. If the Moto Mag was too heavy and another spoke wheel won, that's how it goes in the magazine. So anyway, that is, if I'm modest, I will tell you that is the history of BMX. That's where it came from, step at a time. Van Gogh, great things come from a number of small things brought together. If I'm less modest, I would say that is my history, well researched. I lived through every one of those things. I saw every one of those things. And the only one I couldn't put down was who really built the first straight tube BMX bike.
Yeah, wouldn't it be fun to know and to have a conversation with that person that put that together? And obviously there were conversations with the people that had either taken credit for it or had been a part of that, but really trying to analyze and understand the mind of that person that was designing this frame, because you look at BMX frames and the overall design hasn't changed.
True.
It's stayed the same for 50 years now. And I mean, it's gotten refined, it's gotten tailored, and it's gotten, we use different materials and we've experimented with it. But if you look at a frame from year to year, it doesn't change a lot.
True.
So that's fascinating. So, well, I want to ask you, you talked about being a firefighter, and so you were doing that, and then you started the magazine, but what was it about BMX that really pulled you in, that drew you in?
BMX racing or a BMX magazine?
BMX racing, because you started, as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you started finding your way over to the races, and you something about that pulled you in. I don't know if it was the community of kids that you had started becoming an influence on, or if it was the way that these athletes were riding these bikes, or what it was that made you fall in love with the sport as a whole.
I have an answer. I'm not sure it's definitive. In one way, it will be. In one way, might be a little bit vague. Now, why two-wheel vehicles? I sold my last bike. I'm 86. My last bike was a chopper, bare bones, 3 wires, suicide clutch, jockey shift, stripped down, hopped up engine, apes. Those are hard to ride. You reach a certain age and you just realize I should not be doing this. Do you know how suicide clutch? Do you know why it's called a suicide clutch? I'm answering your question.
Okay. No, I don't.
Because you convert your bike so that you shift directly off the transmission as opposed through a cable up on a grip up here, a lever. You modify the levers and connections, and you shift directly off your transmission. No cables. There's a jockey shift. Now you need a clutch. Well, your clutch, you do through other mechanical connections. You use your left foot lever to be your clutch as opposed to a clutch up here. So your left foot pushes your lever down and the clutch disengages, you shift, and then you let your clutch out. Okay. It's a modification of modern motorcycles, which I did with my bike, my last bike. So suicide clutch, it's called, because you're on a Harley. These are Harleys. We're talking Harleys, man. You ride motorcycles?
A bit, yeah.
What kind do
No,
you ride?
not often. I've got an 86 Honda XL 500S. It's an old enduro that's turned into kind of a cafe racer style. But then I've ridden dirt bikes a bit. I have my endorsement. I just haven't had a street bike I've never had one, not until the XL 500S, but I don't ride it a whole lot.
Okay, us Harley guys are snobs. We are snobby people.
Well, that's why they all
It's, of
have to get the tattoos on their shoulders and
course,
the
yeah,
jackets and the socks and
Harley. Uh, yeah, you don't even, what Harley guys, you don't even ride a Sportster. That's a piglet. You don't ride a piglet, you ride the hog. Okay, so Harley guys. Harleys. Harleys weigh 6, 7, 8, 900 pounds, 1,000 pounds. They are big bikes. So now picture this. You're on this stripped down hot rod chopper, apes. So you're sitting at a signal and there's traffic going by here and there's cars behind you. And you know that the signal's getting ready to change. So you lean your bike over on your right foot. Your left foot goes up on the peg, pushes the clutch in, and you take your jockey shift down here and plunk it into gear. You're loaded. Now, this is a 6, 7, 800 pound bike, and you're loaded, you're in gear, your clutch is in, you're on one foot. If you lose that balance, what happens? You go like this and you're going, oh shit. And your foot comes off the clutch and bam, you leap right out in front of traffic. suicide clutch. So you got to really pay attention. So now we're back to how old was I? I don't know. It was probably probably about 8 years ago. I sold my last chopper. I'm just not tough enough anymore. But to get back to your question, two-wheeled vehicles. I could probably track back in time to where there are two things going on. These guys that came out of the service and then they started. Back then, you could buy Model A Fords. Cheap, they're all over the place. Model A Ford, you can unbolt the fenders, you can take the seats out, you can chop it, you can channel it, you can lighten it up, you can take your four-cylinder engine, put a couple carbs on it, mill the head, straight pipes. You got a hot rod, man. And it's going to go pretty fast because you've eliminated so much of the weight. You just take everything off that doesn't make you go forward fast. Okay. And then there's the bike. So there's the hot rod guys and there's the motorcycle guys, all doing the same thing, except to their vehicle of choice. I was too poor to afford a Model A. A bike was much closer to my growing up, to my financial abilities, which are almost zero. Probably somewhere in there, it was a practical choice. Probably somewhere I leaned towards motorcycles. Doesn't mean I don't. Some of my friends in high school had hot rods that were so cool. I still dream about those things. But I felt, okay, I fell on the two-wheel side of that thing, probably because it was a little bit more within my reach. And that would be 75 years ago, and it has stuck with me the whole time. So that led to motocross racing. That led to getting a mini bike for RL. That led to going to see On Any Sunday. It's a motorcycle movie. And that led to us sitting there seeing these kids in San Juan Capistrano, I think it was, which is real close to where Dom's book release is going to be. He's in Laguna Beach. San Juan Capistrano, I think, is just a couple miles away. Seeing those kids on Schwinn Stingrays, dreaming of the possibilities of that. Two-wheel vehicles. That's the best I can pin it down for you. But photography and two-wheel vehicles, I can look back at my life and both things have tracked all the way through my life. So two vehicles, it was easy to go from motorcycle. I realize this is in reverse of how it should be, because all the kids back then, back in the early 70s, were pretending to be motorcycle racers, but they couldn't afford a motorcycle or their parents wouldn't buy them one. So, but bicycles, Schwinn Stingrays, they could. So this is kind of a reverse thing. This is a really interesting phenomenon. Motorcycles were the goal. They were the dream. They were the motivating factor here. Motorcycle, motocross, Evel Knievel, all of that stuff. BMX bikes were just within their reach financially. And so all these kids would pretend to be motorcycle racers, but then the pretending loomed larger and larger and larger. And now today, do you see motorcycle motocross in the Olympics? No? Don't recall seeing that. Do you see guys on motorcycles doing these crazy jumps and loops and tabletops and kickouts Do you know where they learned that from? Do you want me to tell you? Or you
Yeah.
want to take a shot at it?
That's from
BMX.
BMX.
Yeah. So this pretending just worked. It just worked so well that it became its own thing, and it is what it is today. You and I and Rihanna too, and her kids just went to Tulsa. We saw the headquarters for the USA BMX sanctioning body. That was impressive. That is huge. That is brilliant. I wonder if there might be AMA, American Motorcycle Association. Is there a headquarters for motocross racing? There must be. I
There's got
wonder if it rivals, huh?
and there's got to be. I would assume there is.
I would assume there is too, but I've never heard of it. There must be.
Yeah.
Now, if we were to put them side by side with USA BMX in comparison, here's my point. The offspring grew up and became kind of the leader of that.
Yeah.
Anyway, ironic. I have finished with the history. You want to talk about where BMX Action magazine came from?
Yeah, if you've got some things you want to share, that's great. I mean,
Okay, I
you
don't,
talked a little bit
pardon me?
about it, but
Okay. Bicycle Motocross Action magazine. So Elaine Holt has BMX News. Publications are dominated by deadlines. You live or die by deadlines. You thrive or die by deadlines. Elaine Holt put out BMX News for a few years. It was great. And then I think what happened, and I love Elaine. I hope she's doing really good. I haven't seen her at any of these, like Carson. She should have been at Carson. She wasn't at Tulsa. I hope she's okay. I haven't seen her in like 7, 8, 9, 10 years. About 7 years, I think. Anyway, really nice lady, but somewhere along the line, deadlines got to her, and BMX News started coming out with last year in review. The last Mongoose National Champ, reviewing articles you could pull out of your history, publish them. You didn't have to do much work on it. And so one day Elaine came to me and she said, if you're interested, I would sell, let's see if I can remember the numbers. This would be in about 1970, probably the first part of 1976, maybe the last part of 1975. If you're interested, I would sell you 50% of BMX News for, I think it was $7,000. And I thought about that. And the idea that I had was if I could do it, I could do that for a little while and turn it into a newsstand magazine because I could picture just clear as a bell. I could picture a BMX slick newsstand publication. So I had that. So I told Elaine, give me 1 month. I'll work for you. I will come over to wherever her office was. I will come over there. I'll work on your thing, get to know all the little different things. I'm still in the fire department, remember. I will see if I can do this. And if I can, we'll do it. Except at 51%. So I spent the month working for her. At the end of the month, I said, okay, 51%, I'll do it. And Elaine, keep in mind, I love that lady. Elaine said, I just talked to my bookkeeper and he said that I shouldn't sell this newspaper for anything less than $25,000. And I'm not proud of this especially, but my reaction to that was to laugh, very impolite. Keep in mind, I love that lady. So this is not particularly complimentary of my negotiating techniques. I laughed at her and I said, Elaine, for that much money, I could start a newsstand magazine. And Elaine said, well, that's what my bookkeeper said. So I left. Except I couldn't get that out of my head. 3 o'clock in the morning, I'd wake up and I'd have this newsstand magazine pictured in my head. And so what I did was I started going to William Golden, High Torque Publications, Dirt Bike Magazine, Motocross Action. I went to Peterson Publishing. I went to High Torque. I went to 2 or 3 other publishers and presented them with the idea. My thoughts were, maybe they would want me to do an article or 2. Maybe wildest dreams. Maybe they'd want me to be the editor of the thing. Maybe nothing, but this magazine would be beautiful. And now become a Peterson Publishing guy. Become a William Golden guy. Golden, the High Torque guy, said, oh, we're publishing a new van magazine. We can't, it's in startup. We're not interested. Sorry. Peterson Publishing, they couldn't see it. They could not see a bicycle. The only publication back then of any note was the Boy Scout magazine, Boy's Life, backed by the Boy Scouts. And they could not see a kid's magazine. But one day, this occurred to me. I can remember this day. I'm standing there thinking about this gorgeous publication, and I'm the only guy standing there. And I'm kind of mentally looking around. There ain't anybody here but me. That's true. And so I thought about that one for a while. I don't know how long, day or 2 or 3. And then I went to Wendy and RL because I'm their parent. And this is our life we're talking about. And I said, what do you think? What do you think about if I were to do this? And they both were in favor of it. And so I started putting together the finance. Where am I going to get the money to do this? Okay. Now I realize this is out of, I don't know how this fits in, but somewhere in here I talked to this guy who published racing. He'd gone bankrupt once or twice already. He was doing just fine when I talked to him. And he said, here's what you're going to do. He says, first off, who's going to put the money in here? And I said, well, there's this guy, a manufacturer, who I'm not going to name. He's going to put in $10,000. And there's this other guy here who's going to put in $10,000. I'm going to refinance my house and I'm going to put in $10,000. And he said, this guy ain't going to give you any money. And I'm going, well, he said he would. And this guy just looks at me and says, he ain't going to give you any money. And he said it like death. This other guy, that ain't going to work. I don't know where you think you're going to get your money. You're going to have this money right here that you can get from refinancing your house. And he said, next thing you're going to do, you're going to start this magazine up. You're going to have a big pile of money in front of you. And the only thing you have to do with it is put out a really good magazine. And that money is going to last you about 6 months. And you're going to be broke. And you are going to die. and you're going to go bankrupt, and you're going to have this big ass mortgage on your house, and sayonara, buddy. And man, did I leave there, boy, sober is a good word. I walked out of there thinking, holy Jiminy Christmas. But I started it. I did it. I did it. I went to a printer, major printer. They had a brand new salesman. And there's this dude that walks in and says, I want to do a BMX magazine. They sent their brand new salesman out, Bob Levesque. And he was great. He explained I became pretty much of an expert on web press, printing, major printing, mail outs, all that kind of stuff. But anyway, Bob, as a brand new salesman for Donnelly Press, who was located back in South somewhere, came out to my house. We went through he was so good about that. And so now I had a magazine actually started. I had the Arvada Street Gang to photograph. I had a bike to test. I'm taking pictures. I found a lady, Yvette Barnett, who was a designer. I don't know how I found her. Probably an advertisement in a newspaper or something like that. But anyway, I found she was a brilliant designer. I'll come back to Yvette in a couple minutes. So now I've got a certain amount of money. I've got the first issue started. It's working. I'm doing the writing and the photography. Yvette is doing the design. We're a bi-monthly at the time. I have time to do it on the fire department. And that money that I have I am watching every nickel. And I am the tightest tightwad you ever saw in your life. I'm watching every nickel because I'm remembering what that boat racing guy told me. And there is a thing, picture a chart. You're at zero over here with your magazine, and you want to get more subscribers, you want to get more advertising, and you want the numbers to go up so that this other line up here that is going down on the chart, which is how much money do I have? It's going down because you're spending that money. And if this line here doesn't beat this line here, you're dead. If this line here hits the ground before this line here gets in the air, you are dead, buddy. So I'm watching every nickel in there, and we made the cut. But Yvette would spend 1 month designing the magazine, and she was great. Man, she was great. And the next month, she would sell ads. And she was also great at that. And so there is what, the first 6 issues, maybe the first year of the magazine, and Bicycle Motocross Action magazine is now launched. Keep in mind the other bits and pieces here. My son races. He's really good. He's really stylish jumping. I have this whole gang of kids that hangs out at my house. We're doing this in my house. Whole gang of kids, the Arvada Street Gang, hang out at my house. I got people to do test riding. I've got opinions on how bikes handle. Everything to get a test bike was easy. To think of articles like the old Stingray design, head tube angles, do stuff like that. Cover a race or two, and there it is. There's Bicycle Motocross Action magazine. There's the start of Wizard Publications. There's the Arvada Street Gang. There's Yvette Barnett. 1 month she designs the magazine. 1 month she sells ads. She was brilliant at selling ads. Guess who's advertising? Len Caston, Redline, Skip Hess, Mongoose, Webco, all those old early startup companies.
At this moment, I'm going to interrupt our current interview, briefly to give a special shout out and thank you to our sponsors that have backed us financially in this project, in our mission, and give them a huge thank you. So at our gold level, we have Luminex Neon and Marketing Breakthrough. At our silver level, we have Sound Cedar Lumber and Bicycle Thieves. And at our bronze level, we have Pro Start Gates and Justin Shepard, Title Examiner. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you for backing us. If you are looking for help with any project that you're working on, if you're looking for some cool things to do, go ahead and check out the links to their websites in our description and go ahead and visit them, show them some love. We are so appreciative for their support. And if you are interested in getting involved in a local track, helping out, or sponsoring a local track, sponsoring the BMX Breakthrough project as a whole, please reach out at j@bmxbreakthrough.com. You can also go to our website and find out some of the needs of tracks and some of the things that we are working on at bmxbreakthrough.com. Once again, thank you so much for your support. Let's dive back into this conversation.
First issue, we printed 5,000 copies. We packaged the packages that we sent to the first issue to the bike shops across the US free. I got a mailing list somewhere. We sent them 5 or 10 copies of the magazine. We did that in my garage. The Arvada Street gang there, all my friends were there. Everybody was there. Packaging things, putting labels on them. UPS guy comes up. I can remember that first UPS guy pulls up. We got 75 packages here. Oh, and we're all hauling them out to the UPS truck to go. Okay, that was the first issue to come out was I think it was December, January of 1976. That should be 1976, 1977. But anyway, it was late 1976. So we have 1977, 78, 79, 80. By about 1981, remember we printed 5,000 copies of that first issue? By, I think it was about 1981, we were printing 500,000 copies of magazines every month. 500,000 every month. What's that? 6 million actual copies of magazine per year. They're going all over the world.
Wow.
It grew, that BMX grew that fast.
Wow. So, and the first issues, did you say, were they monthly issues?
Not monthly, every other month.
Okay. Okay.
Gave me time to do it. I stayed on the fire department until probably 1981, 80, 81, somewhere like that.
It's about
And
5
then
years.
all of a sudden, it was another one of those things. BMX Action magazine, just here's the fire department, here's the startup. BMX Action magazine is doing this. I should say fire department is here. BMX Action magazine is it's beating me on the head, buddy. Pay attention to what's going on here. And I left the fire department.
So at what point was it? Because you talked about these two lines intersecting, and you're trying to beat the finances. So before these lines cross over and essentially implode, and you
Right.
run out of money and you've got too many expenses. So at what point did you feel like you had a little bit of reprieve? Like, whew, we made it. I think we're okay.
I don't. Let me throw another thing at you. Back in 1976, when I started this up, ignorance. Let's discuss ignorance for a minute. There are times when ignorance is a really good thing. Let me go back to that thing that I told you earlier. Do what you love. Do it brilliantly. Everything else will take care of itself. When I started that magazine in 1976, I didn't know this, ignorance. I was ignorant of this fact. In 1976, the attrition rate, the death rate of startup magazines, and there were newsstands everywhere, great big newsstands with all kinds of magazines. Early on, when I'm the only guy standing there, I just walk up to a newsstand and I'd look at it and I'm going, oh, they're doing it. I should be able to do it. But here's what I didn't know. Here's what I was ignorant of. In 1976, the attrition rate or the death rate of startup magazines was 95%.
Wow. That good, huh?
5% make it, 95% die horribly. But I didn't know that.
Wow.
So anyway, let's see. Am I leaving anything? That's
Well,
the highlights of where Wizard Publications came from.
no, that's fantastic. Okay, and that answers so many questions. But so the guy, and you didn't say his name. You said you weren't going to, but the guy that you met with, who you asked for money from, after his pep talk, and then
After
combine
what?
after
After his what?
his pep talk, his encouragement of telling you how quickly you were going to sink, which is similar to that of Led Zeppelin's story. You know, when they were told they're going to fall like a Led Zeppelin, and that's how they got their name. Um,
I didn't know that.
that's what I heard. I mean, to be fair, somebody might fact check that and tell me that I'm wrong, but that's the story that I heard. Is somebody told them they were going to bomb just like a Led Zeppelin, and
Okay.
they thought, let's run with it.
Uh-huh.
But maybe one day I'll get to meet Robert Plant and ask him if that's true. But uh, so you've got these two things. So then you've got the ignorance that you talked about. You weren't aware. This guy told you you were going to fail. Then there's the statistics of failing and the adversity that you had to overcome. But to your point, is what you were saying is you were just doing something that was fun. You were just doing something that you loved, and you thought the sport was really cool.
Yep.
Yeah, I love that.
An exact point. Was there an exact point? It's more like an airplane. Uh, you're well, the tail end of the thing. To me, the tail end, the end of that's in retrospect, this many decades later, I look back, those times have become legendary. I look back and I think about occasionally it occurs to me James Dean. James Dean back whenever it was, probably the 60s, I would guess, was this brilliant actor. He was almost anti-acting. He was a whole new thing that came along that just caught on with everybody. James Dean. Are you familiar at all with any of his movies back then?
Yeah,
Rebel
a few of
Without a
them.
Cause, Giant. Okay. And then one day, and of course he is hugely successful. And one day he's driving his Porsche racing thing. I don't know what the number designation. It's this aluminum bodied, really fast Porsche. And how did that go? He's in Northern California, not far from where I lived in Carmel for quite a long time. And he's on this two-lane road and he's flying along. And there's this drunk guy getting ready to make a left turn. And he pulls up and James Dean sees him and his signal is on. And James Dean is right away. And the guy pulls out in front of him and he dies. James Dean dies right there. There's a monument to that there now. It's out in the middle of nowhere, somewhere in Northern California. James Dean. And there he became a legend. Steve McQueen, kind of similar, not as colorful of an ending, of course. BMX Action. It lived for the way I look at it, lived for about 15 years and then died. But because of Nintendo. I mean, a very big thing happened that took our entire demographic, like overnight, and took them inside, put them in front of a television set, and they never came out. And I mean overnight. We're going along way, way up here, and boom, like that. I is this egotistical? Might be. Do I care? Probably not. I wonder if that James Dean factor, BMX action, bicycle motocross action, BMX action, freestyling have become legendary. They have. Want to argue with me about that? They've become legendary. I wonder if that didn't have something to do with it. They lived, they were brilliant, they died. I don't know.
Yeah,
So
that's great. I think the whole, I mean, the whole dynamic of it, the story the the lifetime of it was, I mean, it was so monumental. And you've talked about how you finally come to terms with that a little bit more, and you've come to be okay with taking some ownership and being okay to be the guy that was responsible for
oh, let me
so many things.
rephrase that. I'm proud as shit, man. My size, can you still hear me?
Yeah,
That size went up about 4 numbers. No, I love that. I'm kidding.
but but
I
but
think
I think
I love that. I love that. It makes, once again, I'm 86. I look back on my life and become a bit objective, and I'm going, you did good, buddy. Did good.
yeah.
I'm really
Yeah.
proud of that.
Because I think it even goes beyond. I think the sport continues to impact people. You were a part of what the sport has become now. And and just the lifetime, I believe the lifetimes that BMX lives on. But even beyond that, you had such an impact. You were able to impact so many people within the sport
Mhm.
at the time. And being and impacting people is such a valuable thing to do. And so anyway, I think it's it's absolutely amazing what was created. And I was curious, it was Bob Harrow that designed the logo for Bicycle Motocross Action. But did he?
Let me think about that. Say, one of our stickers, Harrow did a lot of brilliant stuff back then.
Okay.
The actual logo, it is very possible that Harrow did the artwork for that, but the italicizing of the logo was my idea. And truthfully, I was looking at the motorcycle magazine, Motocross Action, italicized logo. It's in design, italics or an angle is an action design component, action dynamics, stuff like that. So I do remember that the italicized version was my idea. Now, putting bicycle, motocross action like that might very well have been Bob's idea. We have we had a few stickers back then that I can remember that Bob was brilliant. Harold was brilliant.
Well, and
Man, I
still
mean,
is.
oh yeah, he is. Yes, he is. Uh, and he did some design work. His cartoons. We This is more than just Bob Harrell. Yvette Barnett, who left, I don't know, after a year or two or something like that. the people that designed the magazine, the people that worked at Wizard Publications. We changed the world. Bob Harrell was a big factor in there. Bob's cartoons had such an impact. They were so dead center BMX racing. Harrell was a racer. He understood it. He knew how to draw it, and he did absolutely just brilliantly. But did Harrell design the first logo? Very possible. Very, very, very. I can other than the italicization of the lettering, which I'm going to take credit for. Other than that, very possible that Harrow designed the logo.
Okay.
If not, I'm not sure quite when Harrow came. He way early on, but I'm not sure if Harrow was there right at the startup. Not sure about
Okay.
that, because we existed when Harrow came with us. Might have been, you know what? You know who gets credit for that? Me and Yvette,
Okay.
because that's who put all this stuff together, first issue. Bob didn't come with us for 6 months or a year, something like that. But I'll
Oh.
tell you what, credit where it's due. I can remember stickers we had that Harrow designed that were just classic. I have one in my icebox now, and it's a bicycle motocross action with a circle around it and some lines on the circle that go out like that. It's on my icebox right now.
That's cool.
Icebox. That dates me. What do you modern guys call it? A refrigerator or
I mean, are we talking about a refrigerator or are we talking about a cooler? I thought
icebox? The icebox.
I thought you were talking about a
It
cooler.
wasn't until way later it was called a refrigerator. Icebox. I can remember back to when a guy with a horse with a wagon with leather doors in the back of it would get in there with one of those things, a big leather thing, throw a big block of ice on his shoulder, walk up to the house, you take the ice, put it in your icebox, there's your refrigerator. I can remember that.
Wow. That's
Yeah, wow.
a couple days before my time.
Couple days, yes.
Oh, Bob, this has been fun. I appreciate your time again.
I hope this, as I think about this, there is a chronology in what we've done here that starts from 0 and goes right up to 1988, 1989, 1990. History of BMX with BMX Action magazine plugged in on the end of it. So I hope this turns out to be a really good episode for you.
I think so. I have had so many people that have talked about how much they have enjoyed the last interview with you. And I mean, the the views on it went crazy.
Did they really? Cool.
Yeah,
Good.
yeah, and
I'm surprised people even remember. I'm sorry. I go to the track.
yeah.
You know, you asked me this one time over in Bozeman. There's maybe 3 people there who know my history. Maybe.
Okay.
So I'm always kind of surprised when somebody has some idea. We're talking the last ice age here, chronologically. Anyway, so
That's
I'm
impressive.
glad that a lot of people enjoyed it. I really am.
No, I think so. It's been really valuable. It's been really fun for me, but I think that I look forward to hearing people's response and reaction to hearing some of the history. And there's certain things that certain people know, and then but there aren't many places where all of that history is documented in the same place. And I'm honored to join in that conversation with you.
Thank you, buddy. I appreciate you putting me on your podcast. I
Absolutely.
appreciate what you're doing. also your overall goal.
Well, thank you.
Well,
I
I see
appreciate
ya.
that.
Will I see you in Laguna Beach?
Yep. I'm gonna go in and look for some tickets later this evening and plan to be there.
Okay, cool. Later, Jay.
All right. See you later,
Good to
Bob.
talk to
Have a
you.
great day. Tell Rihanna I say bye.
Rihanna, Jay said bye.
See you
Later,
later.
buddy.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us in today's episode. It is because of people like you and our sponsors who make this whole thing possible because they have a desire to see the sport grow. If you would like to get involved in the mission of BMX Breakthrough, you can start by going to your local track, find a way to volunteer, help out, and serve there. Or you can go to our website, bmxbreakthrough.com, in order to donate, find out about sponsorship, or learn more.